But no, Beth, your goes crashing down. Determination, the suffering, the ability to... And she's unleashed everything in this attack. See just how much that win means to him. All the marbles. Kayla versus Allison, and to the line. Kayla Laguna takes the victory. Hello everybody and welcome back to more CVRcade World Cup Racing. My name is Jesper Anker and we're now midway through week 2 here in the bracketed session. The money, I mean, some riders now, they can start to feel the pressure. It's just out of reach with that 4th week tournament coming up. The seeding is happening. It is getting very, very interesting to watching the racing. So, CVRcade World Cup, we have that prize purse, $25,000, and whoever wins the Elite Omnium Series finish here in the bracketed session will take home $3,000. Today we start on Dark Matter Tech. It's the no skill event, but then the event creators have changed things up. They've thrown a spanner in the works. Temple Run is up next, but it is not a low skill event. There is no uncrashable ability, so you may see some riders go tumbling down as they think, oh, I can fit in that. No, you cannot. Kayla's Mountain Track is up after that. That is the low skill event. Then we have Sudden Lane Change. Zone K, Zone L, about to be broadcasted. I'll be guiding you through it. Frank will be joining me when the race begins, but there's been some developments in the riders' forums. It's been really good, and I want to go and have a word with one of the racers who's been doing really well here in Zone K, Quentin. Prior to the racing today on K Riders Forum, we saw a bit of back and forth. I mean, this was all started back from the Casey incident on Fantastic Alien Sea. What do you think of all this? What do you think of the development of almost this name calling?
I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to comment on that because it's apparently a very touchy subject. So I would rather just not talk about it and just answer with the pedals.
Oh. Well, speaking of the pedals, today we're changing up the 2nd and 3rd event. Low skill comes 3rd instead of 2nd. How do you think that's going to change up the dynamic of racing today?
I think it's like you said, that there might be a few people who get caught out because they have the thought that the 2nd event is one with an uncrashable ability. But other than that, I think perhaps people might go a little bit harder on the 2nd event because they know they can rest a little bit more on the 3rd one. I don't know. It's going to be a new experience for me as well, so we'll see.
Excited to see how it turns out. Thank you, Quentin. We've also got Ryan Goldenberg in the stream today. He's got his Cocoa Pups over the shoulder. Ryan, Velocity Vixen, you've got riders. You've got Vibeke Bertram, Joyce de Smit. You're on the start line. What's the strategy today from the Velocity Vixens?
Yeah, and we also got Beth and we've got Carl Axel. So at least in terms of the races I've done, I think this is the 2nd biggest contingent we've had. We had 6 one time. We have 5 today. So, yeah, looking at the standings for the session, I see some of my teammates that I want to get higher up on the leaderboard. So I'll be working for them today.
Man, this now... I mean, there's so much pride on the line here in the racing, Ryan. There's so much, like, the temperatures are starting to flare a tiny bit. Is that something that's also happening in the Velocity Vixen camp or not? Because your guys' names don't really seem to come up in these discussions that much.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely passionate about the game, but, you know, I think I'll let some of that conflict or discussion maybe happen, you know, like Quentin said, maybe happen outside of my commentary.
Well, thanks, Ryan. 15 seconds to go as the racing will begin. We've also got Frank joining us in as he comes into the booth. Welcome, Frank. Frank, what's your take on all this? Ryan, Quentin, they all seem to be a bit shy of what's currently happening in the forums.
Well, I was going to go walk, 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 but I thought that would be a little unfair, and I think they're just trying to maintain good sportsmanship, and you can see I'm trying to ruffle some feathers, pun intended, with regards to that. But I think it's fun. I think the community is developing its standards around sportsmanship, and when you're on the rivet and you get blocked, it does have an emotional impact, shall we say? And so it's sort of interesting to follow that.
With a focus back on the racing, today here in the No Skill event, we've seen comeback kit being added, and it's been quite a success, I'd say so, for some of the riders getting back. VBK is using hers now, but today we also have a Racer's Edge as a power-up thrown in there. Frank, how do you think that's going to change the dynamic of the No Skill event?
Well, I think it's going to be very interesting. Here you see Quentin using it to get back, but it would seem you'd want to hold that for the end. So maybe Quentin will just try and go right on by, and leave everybody in the dust. It looks like he's not going to continue the effort here. So doesn't look like that's so. He's at a disadvantage at this point.
I think that was more a necessary power-up to be used more so than a plan to see what it was. As you can see, Quentin now back into the back. He's getting dropped again, so we're seeing some involvement now. I see Tim just saying he wants to come to him. Tim, is there anything you'd like to add to the discussion? I've just seen your message to me.
No, I was just going to say this is crazy fast. Absolutely, like my kicker is spinning out. I'm in the top gear. I'm doing 60 k's an hour. Wow. Like, anyone who gets off the back of this, I don't even think comeback kick would bring him back.
Why do you think this is quicker? Why is this quicker than normal?
I think people have cottoned on. So we've got a bunch of 10 people here. And if you there's that scared nature that if you think you're going to fall off the back, you're going to push to the front, and that's going to bring everyone else up to speed and everyone else up to speed. So it just becomes a sort of snowball effect. I mean, like, Quentin was dropped off less than a lap ago, and he's already 15 seconds down. So our team tactic didn't work. We didn't deploy it because we thought this might happen. So we'll just have to see. We're halfway through now and see what happens. But this is crazy.
Thanks, Tim.
Like, we're not even moving lanes. Normally in dark matter tech, we move lanes from left to right to get the inside lane, but we're just flying.
The inside knowledge from Tim, because Frank, I didn't even clock that. I didn't even clock that the speeds are so high, because in these no-skill events, you've got the blob, it moves so quickly. I mean, is this because the additional numbers of bodies in here that they just go quicker, or what's happening?
Well, what I've noticed is you do get some because of the additional bodies, but you've got a lot of guys in here who are strong. So they're all sort of pushing it, and I think Tim is correct. When you start to see those 60 kilometer per hour numbers, really, I expect one day for someone to come in with some really big gears and just destroy the sprint here. But so I just think it's a lot of people who are strong and motivated.
I mean, if you do come in with bigger gears, you'd have to either have a second bike ready, because I'm not sure how you would fare if further in you've got to do Temple Run or Fantastic Alien Sea or, God forbid, Summit Islands. So, but yes, that could be an interesting dynamic, and like, as we see the way in which the game gets played out, especially today with this increased pace, with so many riders on the front, everyone getting better, Quentin getting caught off guard, you can make less and less mistakes, because with the racing getting more and more refined, every mistake just gets amplified. We've got 700 meters to go here. Tim's on the screen. Sebastian Kuhn is in here. Ryan Goldenberg, Casey Shum, Kin Joel. We get a power up. I can't quite tell who it is. Ryan Goldenberg is going. 500 meters to go here. It is a very long sprint, but with the 79 kilometers an hour further back, Tim Fulford, 300 meters to go. He's got comeback kid, but this fact they've got so much speed means that the pace is going to be so high towards the finish line. Sebastian Kuhn, 100 meters, he stands up, and Cognition rider Sebastian Kuhn, 196. Oh, talk me through that sprint, Frank. What did we just see?
What timing! Sebastian just absolutely owned everybody there. That was just tremendous timing on his spot in a very, very difficult, highly motivated sprint. That was just awesome.
79 kilometers an hour from Ryan. I mean, that is unprecedented in racing on these no-skill events, because everyone looks up at the meters and they go, "It's still 500 meters to go." But when you're going so quick, you run out of real estate. But what did Sebastian do better? Like, describe how his timing was better.
Well, I just think, he sort of sat in, and there's this trade-off that you make in the quote-unquote no-skill events, which I think are developing into actually very, very high-skill events, just a completely different format. We might have to even rename them from that regard. But what you do is you kind of you want to wait, because you want some people to carry some of the speed before you're burning the energy. So there's this sort of tension that you have between waiting and going. And he just did an excellent job of managing that tension, waiting, and then going at the right time, right? Because you can also wait too long. That's part of the tension. But if other people don't go, that's part of the tension. But he just put in a beautiful sprint. He obviously wanted that one a lot.
Because we're gonna go to Sebastian now. Sebastian, that sprint finish was incredible. Frank, really congratulating you on your timing. It's not often we get to see you celebrate like that. Pure emotion. Talk me through that sprint finish. How much did that mean to you?
It was luck. Nothing more than luck. Two riders in front of me went early, and I put the razor's edge and the comeback hit at the same time. And I don't know why I got so much speed that I could pass them. And then all out.
There's no such thing as just luck, Sebastian. If you do it enough, it becomes muscle memory, it becomes skill. Thank you, Sebastian. Congratulations on your win. I want to make a quick round here because we do have so many big racers in here. Ryan, you went early. You tried to change things up. When you saw them come by, you ended up 5th. Do you regret your decision of going early?
No, I knew riders were going to come by me. With comeback hit and just the speed of the blob. I was just hoping it would be, my own riders first, and Carl Axel was up there, so it worked a bit for him. Beth was pretty close at the front there. We were just trying to work as a team. I was trying to get a lead and hope, Carl Axel or Beth could slingshot around me.
Taking a page out of the Team Cognition book on how to race no-skill events. Didn't quite pan out, even though Carl got 3rd. We'll see if you can make the steps up. We've also got Casey into the broadcast. Casey, 79 kilometers an hour. What was it like to have that adrenaline rush, realizing I'm going pretty quick here?
Yeah, I mean, Tim was right mid-race. It was crazy fast. Kudos to Sebastian. It was kind of a new mix-up for us with the power-up. So Sebastian got aggressive, and he took it. It's all about timing and taking the risk when it's kind of unknown. So kudos to him. It's good. It was a good race. Good sprint. I like that format. That was fun.
Now, Tempo Run. This is the second race. This is where we saw some of the incorporation amongst the riders in the front. Do you think riders have learned? Do you think we'll see some of the same, or will we see a different outcome if there is a breakaway?
Yeah, I think people will take the breakaway seriously here. Weight lifted adds a little something, but it'll be fun. It's good to see everybody get some attention from last week's or Tuesday's Tempo Run battle. It's funny, most of the conversation's not with Cycling Hub and me now. So we've talked, we're good. Let's go.
Let's go. 10 seconds to go, and we will get started here in Tempo Run. Frank, you're usually one of the riders to just blow it out of the gate early on. What is the benefits of doing that? Why do you usually spend your racer's edge, your quantum shifts right out of the gate?
I just think getting a gap is really, really important. And I think later on that tactic won't work as well because of the team's ability to work together to pull you back. But there's still a lot of individual behaviors in the teams, and so they don't always coordinate well. And if you get the gap, they also sort of forget that you're putting down a lot of power. You've got to sort of stay over threshold because they think they're going to sort of just ride easy and stay with you. And then before they know it, you've got too big a gap to bring it back easily, and then nobody wants to bury themselves and throw them out the back.
Oh, Christian!
That will change.
Oh, first victim of the not low skill event in the corner. We've got weight lifted as an ability, so you do go quicker here on the climbs, and Christian Weidman on the front just takes an inside lane in the turn. You can see it on the replay now. In the turn, he's trying to go right, but because the radius is so tight and they're going much quicker, he crashes and he'll be wishing he could take that one back. But Frank, it's not too late to make it back, and we go back to see Christians. We've got the bots in here. How will they affect the racing?
Well, you've got a long race. If people don't go hard on the front, the fake players will. They're only 5 seconds behind, so that sort of gives you a sense that you could ride with them for a bit and then shoot across. And I think that's what Christian will probably do: get some rest and then go to the front. Tim's trying to make that impossible by going to the front here, and he's trying to say sayonara, Christian, and anybody else who's not paying attention. And I think this is an interesting play, and Tim will try and use his endurance to make it hurt for everybody.
Velocity Vixen have got numbers there. They've got Beth, they got Ryan, they've got Vibeke and Carl Axel Sander here. So they'll be trying to look if they can line up and help each other. But so far they look to be scattered across the road, with Ryan and Beth making up the front. Carl and Vibeke, the two latecomers, are making their way back with Ben Shuilong down here. I will never forget that day Ben Shuilong on Temple Run. I asked him, what's your strategy? What you gonna do? And he said, I just hope when the break splits, when the peloton splits, I'm in the front group. We've yet to see Ben quite make that front group yet, but today could be the day. Carl Axel Sander may just be struggling here at the back. Frank, there's a wind on this course, and I haven't quite raced it with the wind. How does that affect the racing?
It's a big effect. The joke is it really makes it hurt, I always say. But what it does is you see these guys up in the front who are sort of in a tight pack, and they're really garnering an advantage.
Tim's gone down.
Oh, that's a bad wreck.
So, and Ben goes down too in the same corner. If we do have it on the replay, I didn't quite catch what happened. I think it's just an overlapping of wheels. You can see from Sebastian's point of view, up in the front, Tim is in second place. He's got Beth on the right. He's got Casey on the left. And he goes right and he just overlaps the wheels with Velocity Vixen. And they do make... Oh, that's just going to hurt so much. But if somebody can come back, it is Tim Fulford.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim's not too far back. He's already putting in the effort to climb back on. I think that Velocity Vixen's really missed an opportunity there. I know, it's people sort of have that cycling take and the cycling mentality of, sportsmanship. But this is a game. It's different. And so one of the things that CVRcade typically does is if you go down, we're not waiting for you. This is a game, and you made a mistake, right?
As well. Oh.
Yep, he hit the rock. It caught him out, right? And I think he noticed it, at the last moment. And that's going to be a hard part. But what you would expect here is the 4 people from Velocity Vixens to just go to the front and hammer. And think about it. If they had done that when Tim was off the back and crashed, they would have gotten rid of 2 major pieces of competition at this point. Tim would have been off the back, and Sebastian made that mistake. They would have eliminated 2 of their top rivals right there, but they're just not coordinated. It looks like, Vibeke
goes down as well. It's tough. I mean, we're seeing more crashes now early on, and that has to affect the forwardness of racing, the future races, because every crash, you kind of open Pandora's box. I can't remember who said it, but once you crash once, Frank, they just seem to come again and again, and more and more.
Yes, so you see Sebastian is 5 seconds off the back, and I'll take this opportunity to sort of talk about the power outputs. I looked at the power outputs from the riders, and the top 5 riders in the last race, amazing sprints, amazing power output at the end. And when you sprint like that, and then you're in a situation like this where you have to chase, it hurts. You've definitely burnt a match, and your system isn't, wholly back online yet. And it's like, what are you doing to me? And you see Tim here is like, oh wait, I've got some people at a disadvantage. Let me press the advantage. So great positive racing by Tim today. He likes being off the front. It'll be interesting to see what the rest of the Cycling Hub team members do today with the various chatter that's been out and about.
Oh, Sebastian and Ben in the exact same corner both go down, and I think both of them, they'll be wanting this back. It's been so long since we've had a race like this without Uncrashable, and I think we're now seeing that affect the racing at the front. And it's playing into the roles and the hands of Team Cycling Hub, but the real winner right now as it stands is Casey Shum, because once more he comes in to his preferred zone. He starts the day with a, oh, and I say that! Oh, absolutely jinxed. I'm sorry, Casey. Get that one up on the replay again, because just changing the wheels, I mean, Beth goes down. What's happening, Frank? How come everyone is crashing left, right, and center?
I think weightlifted has a lot to do with it. They're going faster than they normally would be going, and it just changes things a tad, right? And it just changes your timing. It changes where you expect people to be because they can move a little bit faster. And those sorts of things. And you see VBK here making a great chase after going down, and really working to get back. And it'll be interesting. You see Tim really working at the front to try and keep people away. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays over time. So it's an interesting play with as many velocity people at the front as there are. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays. I don't know that I would be doing much work if I was out there. If I could get the gap, I would. But if I didn't get the gap, I'd definitely be sitting in on Velocity's wheels.
I think they have to, because looking at preferred zones, and when the racing is so tight at the top, and the difference days on days out is what, 10, 15 points max, and you have that 16-point deficit starting the day, neither Tim nor Quinton have preferred zones. Casey, Joyce, and Carl all have preferred zones. Ben does as well, but it hasn't been his day. So in this front group, Carl, who I believe is streaming using the in-game widget, will get his points. He doesn't have matching jersey, so they've got to get those points differential. They've got to really push the envelope, because Frank, as you mentioned before, if you go to the front and you do the positive racing, you can ride your opponents out. And it's not just this race, because the effort Casey will have to do to get back in, he's going to feel that in Kayla's Mountain Track. He will feel that in Sudden Lane Change. So it's more of a move of not only winning this race, but winning the next two.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see, now you see Velocity and Cycling Hub forming up together and really putting the hurt down on Casey. And you see that VBK was very close. So I'm surprised that Velocity Vixen didn't wait for her to get the numbers. She's very strong, a very strong rider. So I would definitely want her in the group. But maybe they just see the opportunity here to get Casey out. But unless they're communicating with VBK, I think she'll try and come back, and she's just going to drag Casey right back up there. And they'll work together. So that's an odd team dynamic going on right now. If I was Velocity Vixen, I'd even let Quentin and Tim off the front while I waited for her, and then you had 4 people to pull through. And really, if you get coordinated, the amount of energy that you can spend on the front and then recover at the back should more than trump anybody else. So some odd dynamics going on here.
Is Tim helping Casey? We briefly saw Tim on the phone before dropping off the group. He was sending a text, and it very much looks like he's helping Casey back to the front group. This could be a pact between Team X, Team Cycling Hub, because they need the numbers. Like Velocity Vixen, they've come out. Oh, and Casey crashes again! And so Tim also, you can see, I think Tim was trying to help him back. He smiles, he thinks, right, that's it, Casey. You get 1 freebie, you do not get 2. And Casey waves goodbye. What do you think of that interplay, Frank, of doing deals between the teams in order to regain an advantage on other trade teams?
Oh, I think it's awesome. And it keeps you guessing a little bit. And here now you see, now Velocity Vixen's in a tough spot to bother, right? You don't really want to bring Casey back, so you don't want to let VBK back. But earlier, that's what I was talking about. You kind of want those numbers, right? And you've got a really strong rider off the back. I think I'm surprised they didn't sort of go to the front and just sort of slow it down so she could get back. Like I said, she's a very strong rider, so you definitely would want her in the group. Oh, and then she's definitely in communication with the teams, right? So that was just awesome. A little bit of a block. I think that's a good sort of level of blocking. I might have gone one or two more to slow Casey down even a little bit more, but there you see, I think that's a good tactic in the game. Sort of frustrate the player a little bit. Maybe get Casey to go on tilt, and that could be either a good thing or a bad thing as you look at the front of the group. But you definitely want to keep Casey off the front.
Casey's always animated. He's reacting to every word Frank says. So good friends both in the racing on the broadcast. But interesting development here. Carl Axel Sander, it is preferred zone. I would imagine they were racing for the Swedish Viking, but he's been dropped. He's now back with Casey. Are we going to see the exact same thing Vibeke did now from Carl? Because what happens now is that preferred zones essentially get taken out of the equation as it stands now. Ryan, Beth versus Tim and Quinton on the front, and I'm not sure who favors that one. Beth and Ryan are beginning strong. Quinton, some cramps last racing. Tim, sick as well, so we will see. But from Casey's point of view, he's going to have to come through Carl. Vibeke further back. Sebastian Kuhn, amazing timing on a sprint in the previous race, but 2 crashes in this one finds him in 8th. We've got a lot of racing remaining. We've got Kayla's Mountain Track and Sudden Lane Change with relatively high scoring multipliers, but this one does usually set the tone going forward. So Frank, coming in to the final lap, how do you think we're going to see this pan out amongst the teams at the front?
Well, this is very interesting. So Velocity has gone from a position of power to really being in a sort of a position of weakness with just Beth up here. And Cycling Hub should be pushing now to keep off the other Velocity Vixen members. Now, interesting to me is it seems, and this is why I would have brought back Vibeke earlier, because now they'd have 3 to chase back up to Beth. And so that would put them back in an advantageous position, but they're sort of writing themselves out of that advantage. So that's sort of interesting. And you see Beth sort of hanging back here. I'm not sure this is the play, but I think maybe she also wants to get speed to go by because you saw Q doing some blocking out on the front, which is I'm still not sure I understand that tactic. So I'll have to chat with Quentin to understand what the thinking is there. Generally, I could see gapping Beth would make a lot of sense, like right here. I would certainly look to gap her and then sprint back on, and just really make her work for it and just repeatedly gap her, right? So now she has this decision of having to either sort of sit in the draft and gain in the draft but get gapped, or sort of maybe go to the front and try and break herself. So it puts her in a compromised position in terms of her tactics, and I would certainly look to do that. Now she's setting here great positioning by Beth to try and foil that. Oh!
That has to be commentator's curse. Oh, poor Beth.
Yeah, and because she was really playing that well, I thought that was really big. And I know I'm harping on this whole Vibeke thing, but when you have a strong rider like that, boy, wouldn't Beth like her to be in the mix now as well? And so it's becoming very, very interesting. Bad timing for Beth there because her team had just gotten back. Now I could see going to the front and doing a little bit of blocking if I was Velocity, but it's so hard and so dangerous here what you might give away.
Especially with a weight-lifted power or ability. Now, Tima goes on to the attack. This is probably the only place on the hill where you can actually attack it, because any other point, any other switchback, you have to be careful of not going too quickly into the corners, because you will slide out. Tim with a Razor's Edge power, or Razor Blade, as Beth calls it. As you can see, he now comes in. He's actually forced to break in these uphill switchbacks, because with the weight lifted, the 30 kilograms lighter, they simply go so quickly. Now, further back down, Ryan, Quinton, Carl, Axel, Sander, what do they have left? Are they happy to let Tim go up the road? Are they fighting for secondary positions? We need to see some assertiveness out of Velocity Vixen here. As Frank mentioned, they've had the numbers, but the one thing they've been lacking is that killer instinct. But Frank, I mean, we hear this time and time again for Velocity Vixen. It's more about getting everybody in the top 5, top 6 than getting one person on the top spot. Is this something you agree with?
Oh, I just think that's a good PR. I think all the teams are here to win. And, sure, it's nice to, have 4 out of the top 5. But if you don't have spot number 1, that's got to hurt a little bit. So, I mean, I think it's, great consistency in racing, as Ryan would say, but I guarantee that people on Velocity want to win. I've known Beth for a long time, and I know she wants to win. Carl certainly strikes me that way, and Ryan. Oh, that hurts.
Crash again.
There is a commentator's curse.
Somewhere.
This is awesome. We just speak the name and they go down.
Somewhere, Ben, Sebastian, Casey, Carl, Beth, they're like, how dare you? How dare you, Frank? As Quinton now is going to leave Ryan behind in the attack with a Racer's Edge. Ryan has already used his Racer's Edge to get back onto the group. So, massive kudos to Team Cycling Hub. They were, I'm not sure in a place of disadvantage, but they were definitely the lesser likely one to win at one point because of the numbers from Velocity Vixen. But they've executed fairly well on it. There were a few questions being thrown out, but I think the main thing is, like, Tim crashed, but it was early on. Quinton saved his legs in the first race, but Frank, there's so much racing ahead of us. I mean, this one is going to take out incredibly amounts of energy from their legs, and with Kayla Mountain Track being a low skill and not a no skill, they have to do that crazy, stupid, long, steep hill, or I call it that, some call it a mole hill, but I just think that takes so much out of your legs, and with a 1.5 scoring multiplier, that's going to set the racing up for sudden lane change. Further back, Frank, it looks like Velocity Vixen may not even get onto the podium. I think we're gonna hear from Casey here. He wants to speak. What's up, Casey?
I want you to talk about the 3 up front, the rest of the race. Talk about them all you can.
So on Casey's demand.
I get it. We're supposed to say Tim, Quentin, and Ryan so that one of them will go down. I got it now. But don't say the other names. I got it. Okay.
We'll never say Casey Shum's name ever again here in the broadcast.
So a couple of things I think that are very interesting, and you'll see this. One of the things that Velocity does is makes this hurt. When I saw the starting lineup, I was like, darn, I should have raced K instead of L, because I was like, this is going to be super competitive. But I don't know if everybody noticed this, but the front was doing like 450 equalized watts, the people on the front. Tim and Velocity Vixen. And you see someone like Casey here, and you just get caught out a little bit, and there forms a gap, and one person can't really hold 450 watts for 20 minutes to pull them back, right? So it becomes very, very difficult to pull back. So, but in this case, I think Tim has gone down.
Casey's strategy worked in full for basically flawless since his earlier crash. And the shake of the head. So Casey Shum, I'm sorry, but Casey Shum did predict that Tim Wilbur was going to go down. We'll notice to see if it works both ways. But this opens the door for Ryan. But meanwhile, on the front, Quentin Molyneux is in a position to win. Frank, we saw them slow down before for Tim. I think Quentin may be on the text with Tim. I think they're now discussing whether or not to slow down. Because we saw this strategy deployed before from Cycling Hub, allowing Timothy.
They can't let Tim go by. Quentin has, said he's going to be talking with his legs. He best talk with his legs and cross the finish line, right? And then he can just go back to CVRcade Riders and like a whole bunch of posts and smile all the way while doing it. Yeah, so I think that had to be the play there. And now Quentin is on the hot seat.
Carl Axel Sander managed to crash one more time. Somewhere the Swedish Viking, who I believe has also got a PhD in something. Anyway, he could have used that extra brain power in this race as he finds himself off his bike a few times. Velocity Vixen, I commend the strategy that was deployed. You were up there, you were so close. You do end up with third place on the podium, but now we come into Kayla's mountain track. Sebastian Kuhn taking a bit of a fall on the podium, but first race back, first really long effort back from Sebastian Kuhn. We'll see. You can see Quentin on the phone. I'm not sure if he's either texting Tim or liking more post, but I guess we'll see as everything comes to an end. But what this does do is it changes the scoreboard. If Tim was to win this race, he would be significantly higher up on the scoreboard than the rest, like 20, 30 points. But with Quentin crossing the line first, this somewhat opens the door. Casey, with a 16-point bonus that he gets from racing his preferred zone, is currently ahead of Quentin in second place, and not too far back. But Quentin, congratulations. That looked like a really tough race. You were up against it. You had Velocity Vixen with bigger numbers. How did you devise a plan to beat them?
I think the plan was straightforward once Tim crashed. I just went to the front for a little bit, act like I was doing an attack, and then just slowed it down very subtly so Tim could come back a little bit easier. And then once we got back in a group of 4 with 2 Vixens, it was just a matter of hoping somebody crashed, which happened a few times, and then just trying to attack a little bit, but not go all out, because, I mean, it was a long race and there's still 2 races to come, so we still had to keep a lot in the tank.
The scoreboard is close. It's a similar situation with Casey having bonus points, so you and Tim, you've got to stay on it. Do you have a plan once more to try and get rid of Velocity Vixen, Casey Shum, and the rest?
I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Casey had a little bit of bad luck in the race. I think he crashed twice in the same corner, which is just, I mean, bad luck. I'm sure he'll come back and give it to us, so we'll see what happens.
Well, good racing. I want to get a word from Ryan Goldenberg because I want to discuss the strategies of Velocity Vixen. Ryan, you had the numbers, you had it up there. Frank was wondering why you didn't wait for Vibeke. Was there a decision made in there, or was it just spur of the moment?
We played it a little bit by ear, but I think we had 3 of the top 5 or 3 of the top 6. I'm not saying we would have been happy just with top 6, but I thought we had good enough numbers not to let, I think it was Casey back there with Vibeke. And we know Casey's always a threat too, so you know, I don't know which way the numbers work better, but I don't have any regrets about our strategy.
You got more chances coming up now. Chance to take the top spot. You yourself are finding yourself in 3rd place here, Ryan. I know you were saying you were in this as a domestique for your teammates. Will that change? Will you take over as the captain, or what can we see from Velocity Vixen?
No, it won't change.
Oh. Anyway, Ryan, I'll let you get back to it. More racing is coming up. 45 seconds to go, Frank. You look at the scoreboard. It's very close. Who's your favorite as it stands now?
Well, I think Ryan as domestique doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. I'd definitely be moving him to team captain for the remaining 2 races. And because he's in 3rd place, and he can certainly move up, but he's got to do well in these next couple of races. So Velocity Vixen has got to push him over the line first, and then he can certainly move up the podium. I think Quentin and Tim are sitting pretty with Cycling Hub. They both have some points at their disposal, and we'll see how it goes.
Ryan Goldenberg, racer's edge out of the gun. Beth York as well. Casey was quick to accelerate. You've got to be careful in this corner. You can take it too quick, but doesn't seem like anyone is doing it. Vibeke is there, Ben is there. So a Cooper attempt from Velocity Vixen is being attempted here. They want to catch the other riders off guard with Vibeke Bertram in 2nd place. In 3rd, Ben Shuilong. Didn't have the best of races on Temple Run. Now, this is the low skill event. It may be the 3rd race of the evening, but it is the low skill, uncrashable. You don't have to worry about falling off your bike. And what we're seeing early here is Tim, Quentin down in 7th, in 8th and 9th now. So perhaps could be feeling that previous effort, because you looked at it, the equalized watts, they looked high, the equalized heart rates looked high. And if you are Velocity Vixen, you want to make sure this does not come back into a peloton. But I'm liking this move, Frank.
Watch
I'm
for the
liking
blocking.
this move.
Watch for the blocking on Quentin. Quentin did some blocking early. He caught Carl out. Carl burned his power up. Oh, and nobody blocks him. I definitely would have been looking to do some blocking on Quentin as he came through there.
Gets through safely, but he did have to burn a power-up. You get 1 Racer's Edge, 1 Quantum Shift in this race. We do have a wind of 7 kilometers an hour once more. And Quentin and Tim, they still need to make sure to keep that gap up, because further down, Casey, Ben, Joyce, and Carl, they're all racing with their preferred zones. They do get that point. So looking at the scoreboard, like right now it's preliminary, but due to streaming, due to bonus points from preferred zones, there are all these intricacies that do add up. But despite the early attacks from Velocity Vixens, it's all coming back together now. And this is going to be interesting, because power-ups have been burnt. Ryan, Beth out with theirs. Quentin has used his. Casey, Christian, they've still got theirs left now. What can we expect to see next, Frank?
Well, this starts to form up into an interesting race. Did Carl make it back, or did they put him back off? No, he made it back in. I think it's going to get very, very interesting. It'll be interesting to see what Casey does. Does he sort of team up now with Velocity Vixens and sort of switch from the Team Cycling Hub camp, or does he just follow Christian off the front here? And he said, no, I'm on Team X, and Team X is going to show you how this is done. So some very interesting racing developing here.
I like Christian Whiteman. He's been on the cusp of some great victories, but just not been able to take that final step up. He's also racing his preferred zone here, and he's in 5th place currently. Both him and Casey. At the end of the day, depending on how sudden lane change goes, that is a tempo course, a very different course from the cycling that we're seeing on the screen now. I mean, we could see Team X take 1 and 2 come the end of it, but if Velocity Vixen, if Cognition, if Team Cycling have anything to say about it, they want to change things up. Tim has dropped the headband, just bumps into Christian Weidman, but especially now, Frank, with the 3rd event being the low skill, do you think we'll see more blocking because there's more tired legs?
Blocking, I think, does become more of an option when you realize you can't hang. Definitely your teammates start to look more towards that than anything else. And you see Casey trying to get in here desperately and finally makes it in, but only to be sort of trapped now between a Cognition rider and Cycling Hub. But there's some movement by Quentin, so it still looks like they're cooperating well together here. And Cycling Hub would be happy to see Christian take the win and take some of those extended points, certainly with Tim right behind him. And that'll move Tim up into the lead, and a nice lead it'll be as well.
Now we watched the racing unfold. We're halfway through. I just want to do a dedicated shout out. CSAG Rogers is watching the broadcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching CVRcade World Cup Racing, where they're racing for $25,000 from their basement, from their pain cave, as Casey Shum. He's trying to bridge across to Christian Whiteman. He does do so, and he's got to catch up to Tim now. Side by side, these two giants are going at it. I think this is shaping up to be a fantastic finish, with the legs starting to give out. A very just under the radar performance. Alison Kubota has just slowly raced her way up, and what we're seeing, Frank, is that some racers specialize in certain courses. Like Doug Matavello, Timothy Tumont, you sudden lane change. Alison has really fallen in love with this course. What do you think it is?
You just have an affinity for certain courses. This is not one I have an affinity for. In fact, I can't stand this course. I don't know why. Maybe it was from the early days when it had like a 20% gradient on it.
Yes, those days were tough.
I still have bad memories of that. But generally this one is just hard. It's fine in a no-skill event because you just power up the hill with the blob. But when you don't have that effect and you've got wind on it, this is just... it's a hard drag up this hill, and you got to sort of lay down the power, which you see what is Casey's doing here, and Tim's responding, and you just see them like they look like they're in mud. They're slowing down, and it's just sort of the opposite of what you want to feel on a road bike. You want to feel that speed. This is more like a mountain bike course, even though it's on the road.
Now I see Channel 1 has also joined in and watching the CVRcade World Cup. My name is Jesper. I'm joined by my co-commentator Frank Garcia, who you'll see race later on today. You're watching physical esports. These riders, you see Casey down below, Tim down below, they're powering their avatar on the screen using their legs. Their legs are their controls. Now, I've done this talk to you guys so many times, but it's very rarely I get Frank here in the booth. Channel 1, Frank, try and explain what we're watching.
So we are watching physical esports. So as you've already mentioned, people are on their bikes using their legs to control their avatar along with controllers so they can move around and catch the draft. You see the little wind particles blowing across the screen, which is just an indication that there's also wind. And drafting, and there's power-ups. We've seen a lot of power-ups deployed already in this race. What you also see that's interesting in this race is it keeps sort of expanding and contracting like an accordion. So people try and go off the front, they try and get away, and then the pack brings them back time and time again. And this has got to be really starting to hurt in terms of the the burn in the legs and the lungs starting to sort of catch fire. And we'll see how they finish this up, especially with those climbs in the wind.
So this app, by the way, guys, is free to play, and if you want to try it out, you can head to CVRcade.com, because not only are they using their legs, they're not just mindlessly just riding away on their bicycles. They've got real life physics, real life cycling dynamics in the game. So right now, Tim, in the draft of Allison, of Casey, he's going to have to steer using his keyboard to be in the correct position. And in some races, you can crash. In some races, you can't. Some races are realistic like this. We've got 2.1 kilometers to go on Kayla's mountain track that was created by the community. Then we've also got power. There's so much to tell you about CVRcade, but this is a realistic looking course. Up next is sudden.
You got the power up going off the front. You got Ellison wanting to put the hurt down. So this is an amazing move by Ellison that's taking off. Tim's trying to respond.
Yes, the Racer's Edge powers are being used. Casey now keeping his in return. I was about to say, stick around for the next one, because sudden lane change is a race you want to see. Now, Tim and Allison, this is a duo we've seen battle it out on Kayla's mountain track time and time again. So far, Tim has gotten the better of Allison pretty much every single time here. Will today be any
Casey's
different?
Been caught out, but he's trying to work his way back. Very, very interesting dynamics at the front at this point.
3 seconds off the back is Casey. Sebastian Kuhn is also making his way back, because the secondary positions are very vital here. Velocity Vixen holding hands.
Sebastian had some power-ups. Very interesting with 1.3 kilometers to go.
We'll see. The German judge making his way back. He's got 2 slots in there he can take from Ryan and Carl, which will move him further up and bring down the scoreboard. This is what they're racing for. The Omnium, it is incredibly close. And there's so much on the line here coming into the bracket session.
Ellison wants this one. Ellison wants this one. Very interesting as they set up for the sprint.
We'll see. Team Cognition in the blue.
Oh, Tim is getting into the draft. Look at Tim. He is in the hurt locker. Ellison has put him there. Ellison has just got to light this up now.
But can she do it? This is where we've seen it so many times, Frank. Side by side, Allison happy to just take the lead on the front and then let Tim come around last lap. Allison or Tim, Frank, who's your money on?
I'm going with Ellison. I think that she's got the upper hand, saved a little energy from the last race in the Omnium, and she's just going to overtake Tim at the end.
Oh, bold call. Here she goes. 700 equalized watts. Oh, and Tim comes around with 1,000. She needs to stay in here, but Tim, he wants this one as badly as Allison does too. With it being equalized racing, 2 racers, different genders, different backgrounds, are able to compete on equal footing here. And now advantage is to Allison. She's in the wheel of Tim with 300 meters to go. Tim is just going to sit back. He's not going to want to do anything, but this is allowing Casey to come back.
Yeah,
Casey's 5 seconds.
Casey's coming back.
Oh,
it's
3
absolutely,
seconds.
they're going to let him back in. And Casey will ignite for the sprint.
Oh, 2 seconds. Casey's gonna have so much more speed. He's coming up now on the inside. 100 meters to go. But when Tim goes, there's no looking back. Team Cycling Up takes first. Allison secures the second place and Casey gets third. But there wasn't much left for Allison. Then we've got the Velocity Vixen, Happiness Train, the fourth and fifth. Ryan and Carl shaking their head from Ryan. Sebastian will be sixth. Didn't manage to catch the two riders as he wipes the sweat off his face. Ben Stewie Long in eighth. And Quentin Molyneux down in 10th. So this is where those points come in. This is where those points that Quentin took over Tim in the second race. This is going to be incredibly close coming into the last race of the day, Frank.
Absolutely, some exciting racing there. Pulling for Ellison. I think maybe she could have gone a little bit earlier, and I think she had probably more length than Tim. You know, but Tim is always just so difficult to take out, if you will, in those races. So really exciting stuff there. I'm gonna try and get ready for the next zone as well. So I'll be sort of in and out.
We'll see Frank race on broadcast in the next race, which starts in 15 minutes. Sudden lane change is coming up as we watch the highlights of the previous one. This is gonna be intense racing. We go to Tim, who's on the front. He's leading with 136, but with preferred zones coming in, that does change the math. Tim, that last race, you and Allison have found yourself in the front so many times. You usually get the upper hand. Is that just down to the pure sprint, or is there something else you're doing differently than Allison in those finishes?
No, I don't think it's equalised. It's got nothing to do with the sprint. I mean, it was tough. Like, that's 10 strong efforts up that hill, and then when you get to the top, there's a slight headwind. So it was brutal. I think Allison probably played it a bit more conservative. Like, and I was just trying to rip treads off people. But yeah, no, I was waiting for the kind of signal was Allison was going to, because I know she'd already used her quantum shift. It was kind of a lane change would have to happen. So if she was going to lane change, I was going to kick and hopefully stay ahead.
Now, sudden lane change is coming up. We've got wind at your back. This is going to be wacky. I think we've done something very similar not too long ago with the Racer's Edge. Have you practiced this with the new variable of wind at your back ability?
Nah, you're going to accelerate quicker and stay at a higher pace. So we'll see who can handle it. Also, you won't get as much of a sprint because the resistance will be off your trainer. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a fun watch.
Now let's go and have a word from Casey. Good luck, Tim, in the last race. Because Casey, your preferred zone is coming up. This is it. With a 16-point addition to your racing, you sit at about 24, which puts you 12 points behind Tim. That means if you were to win, Tim comes third. I believe you take the day. Now the question remains, is there enough left in the tank, and can you pull this one off?
This one will be more about who makes mistakes. You have to work hard in this race, but it's more about the mistakes. This race physically won't be as hard, but you can hurt yourself so bad with the mistakes. So it's really Tim's to lose by mistakes, and the rest of us to push him and not give it away either. So, we'll just give it what we got here and keep your eyeballs on the road and your hand on the keyboard.
I like it. 45 seconds to go. Final word from Velocity Vixen's Ryan Goldenberg. It's been quite a roller coaster of emotions for Velocity Vixen. Will you end on a high note here?
Oh, I hope so. I think Casey's right. It's about minimizing the mistakes. And, yeah, that's really it. I mean, especially with wind at your back. I remember the last time we did this. Whoever the organizer is, and I might have a good idea. They're pretty clever throughout this whole Omnium, just mixing things up.
Well, good luck, Ryan. We go. Frank Garcia, this is one of your favorite courses. We see from the gun usually attacks happen. Talk to me about the rhythm that takes place in a race like this and the pressure you put on other riders.
Yeah, I think you go out strong, try and get out of the traffic. And because that becomes just, it's hard enough navigating through the barriers by themselves, but when there's lots of people around, it becomes especially
Ooh,
difficult.
Tim fell down. Tim has the disadvantage. Carl also crashed, so very early on, let's see if we can get a quick replay while that. Sorry for cutting you off. But this is what Casey was talking about, applying the pressure to Tim Fulford. And it looks like Tim, through this corner, just goes out a bit too quick, slides out with the wind at his back, and goes right into Sebastian. This changes the top. Casey is up there. Sebastian is up there. Can you come back from that, Frank? It is 6 laps. Crash first lap. Can you come back?
You can absolutely come back. But now you have to be spot on everything. And then if you're Casey, you just have to not make a mistake. And boy, but when you're trying not to make a mistake, that's when mistakes can happen.
I was gonna say, especially when you keep mentioning somebody's name, that seems to be the difficult part as Casey now on the front, just keeping an eye on it as he knows the corner speeds, he knows the dangers that are ahead of him.
Wow, that was close.
I mean, he's pushing it. He's definitely pushing it here. With wind at his back, too. You don't really know how the acceleration is going to push you as it all changes as you go around. Sebastian Kuhn, I'm trying to figure out how the scoreboard is going to look after this because Carl, Axel, Sander, Casey have got their bonus points. But Carl can go from either 7th to 1st, depending on how he finishes in this one. That is how close this Omnium is currently. And I think he knows that as well. He's going to have to push it. But starting his assault, starting his comeback, Tim Fulford was in 9th from his crash. He's now in 6th and only 8 seconds back. If there's a person that can do this, who can apply the pressure, it is Tim. But you start getting into the racing, Frank, and you have other racers in your way. How frustrating does that get?
Well, you just, it's not really that frustrating because you're just concentrating so hard on missing them. When they crash in front of you, it's a little bit disconcerting for multiple reasons. One, they can sort of regen and become solid again at just the most inopportune moment. But it just sort of reminds you, when you see somebody crash it, just as a human, you're like, ooh, I don't want to do that. So that's a little bit distracting. But other than that, you just sort of focus. And Tim's really got to push here. And, Sebastian's trying to be the spoiler, really keeping the pressure on Casey. And I think Casey wants this one bad.
I think he does so too. Tim still has his power-ups, Racer's Edge and Uncrashable. And realistically, he doesn't need to catch Casey. He needs to catch Sebastian. Sebastian is the threat further up. Allison has already crashed once, and we go to Sebastian. So, Ryan, Sebastian, Allison. 2 Cognition, 1 Velocity Vixen. In between the Team Experimental race leader currently and Team Cycling Hub's Tim Fulford. Sudden lane change just changes everything. And with the addition of the wind, it can be tough as Sebastian hits into the back of Robert. And that's what you've got to keep an eye out for. You've got to be optimal lane choices. Ryan has used both his power-ups. He's got nothing left. And with 2 kilometers go, Tim only has 3 seconds to make up.
Awesome job. Yeah, Tim is just doing an awesome job navigating everything. He's really in rhythm. And when you're in rhythm, you can make up a lot of time.
Especially when Allison takes a tumble. Carl is coming back up, and Carl too is starting his ascent side by side here. Carl and Tim as they try and dodge, dive, duck, and dive through the pylons. As Carl from 7th up to 5th, and I think he can actually pass Casey, but he would need to go up and win the race. But so far on the front, Casey has been flawless as well. But Tim, what you're seeing here, Frank, is every straightaway he's deploying 1200 equalized watts. He is sprinting and then braking the very last moment you possibly can.
Yeah, this is really a study in how to ride this course. And he's all in now with the power-up drop. And it's going to get very exciting here. Very dicey with people in front.
Yeah, it's dangerous. He's using Racer's Edge and he's forced to break through. Now he's got Carl still on his left. This is where he crashed the last time around. He's learned to go slow in order to go quick. Meanwhile, Casey's on the front, but Sebastian and Ryan, Casey is riding well as well. But here is the story. Tim, to win the Omnium at a disadvantage from not racing his preferred zone, not getting the bonus points, he needs to catch Carl, who's just passed him, catch Ryan, catch Sebastian. But I think Carl now may just be his biggest threat with 1 lap to go as well. Uncrashable. We give Casey some airtime on the front because he could still make a mistake. He gets lucky. The butt chooses the left. He could have chosen the right. You see it from Casey. He knows it. Last lap. The points matter for the seeding, but it is so dicey. The next race starts in 4 minutes and 55 seconds, so make sure once this race finishes to get ready for Zone L. Tim Fulford on it. Side by side, we see the two of them as it's gonna get so close. Carl Axel Sander, though, can be the decider amongst them. Tim has got Uncrashable. I think he's gonna throw all the caution into one last attempt, but when is it gonna be? He passes Sebastian. Sebastian with Racer's Edge and Crashable gone, but Carl Axel Sander from Velocity Vixen. When you think Tim is doing well, Carl goes, watch me, Frank, watch me. 300 meters remain. Uncrashable is still up there. Casey Shum, though, he's got 200. He's got a right-hand turn and a left-hand turn, and then he'll be able to see the finish line. The gap, though, to Carl is growing out. Whew, sudden lane change really changes things up when it comes to racing. One crasher out the back, and then you've got gaps to make up. Casey Shum happy with that one. Tim, though, this is it. Uncrashable is being thrown in. Sprinting everything he's got. Carl crashes!
Oh! The pressure! The pressure gets to Carl. Oh, that is heartbreak in the last corner, all on his own. Oh, I think he had that one. I think he just hit the panic button. That is so unfortunate. That's heartbreak.
That is amazing. Oh, you gotta feel for them, Carl, at the end. Just getting... Frank, it's the spur of the moment. It's the excitement. It's the corner speed. But Tim ends up taking it. And we need that on instant replay. I mean, their heart rates were all up. Our heart rates were all watching and cheering on. And that, right there, ladies and gentlemen, is CVRcade World Cup Racing. The stakes. Tim wanting to win that one, knowing he's at a disadvantage, throws everything he's got into one last attack. We see Casey. This is where he thinks he's got it. Thumbs up. How can Tim possibly catch that gap? Carl's been flawless, but the pressure of coming quickly, coming on the inside is so tough to make up. Now, again, if you see the other person drop the power up and you think you have to respond. I don't think Carl had to respond there, but it's so hard. You don't know because you know that Tim is just going to do an all-out sprint, can whip around that corner where you can't. And so he tried to shave a little bit of time by going on the inside of the corner, and it cost him big. But by the way, we should give a shout-out to Casey. Tremendous race. No errors on that course, which is well done. So kudos to Casey. Now we've got Tim on the broadcast here. Tim, absolutely insane the way in which you gained back that gap. That adrenaline must have been flowing. Getting Carl on the line must be a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd manage to get Carl. I was looking at the scoreboard, just want to make sure I come across the line with the first place in the Omnium, but I had that Uncrashable. I think I timed it just about right, and just held on for the end. Like my first crash on the first lap, I couldn't do much about. So just got to compose yourself and try not to crash again.
Now you go again. This one, you gotta try once more the same 4 courses. Are we gonna see more from Team Cycling with this one, or what are we gonna expect?
Nah, Zone L will be. It won't be racing for my win on Zone L. Training session. Happy to take any bids for help. So yeah, just some good racing, hopefully.
There you've got it. Get your offers into Tim Fulford of Cycling Up. Now, Casey, you did so incredibly well, but in the end, that's out of your control. You did well, but you did your job. But when you saw Carl go down, I mean, somewhere your heart must just have sunk a tiny bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm rooting for Carl, obviously, but I did what I had to do. I didn't use a power-up. I even thought about it the last lap, and I'm like, no, because it'll force myself to make a mistake. I was in a rhythm, and I'm just going to do my thing. And Tim pulled it off, and he you know, you're right. Carl responds to that power up when maybe he doesn't need to, but that's the experience in the game. Tim knew what he had to do, and he performed, and he came back. So I'm super happy with that effort. I couldn't have performed any better, and I couldn't have put more pressure on Tim to make a mistake. We both performed the best we could. He had an unfortunate wreck. So well earned. I'm completely content with that.
It comes back to a crash or two. Does that mean it's back to the drawing board on how to find out where to optimize the speeds and the powers in the corners?
Yeah, I mean, I just got lucky to kind of not have a lot of traffic impede me. I had to move my lanes a few times to not get stuck behind somebody in the gates and that. But the first couple of corners is the hairiest part, and I just happened to kind of have a few fall down around me to get out of that distraction, and I could just focus on the power. Hitting the brakes soon enough on the long straights to not slide in the corners. Don't take any unnecessary risks. Tim probably did faster laps than me, but he had a 10-second deficit that he couldn't come back from.
Thanks, Casey, and congratulations on the good effort. Beth York is also in the broadcast now as Zone L gets underway. You just watched Zone K. This is Zone L. So Zone K is part of the CVRcade World Cup. We're racing for $25,000. Frank Garcia has jumped out of the commentary booth and onto the field. As we can see, also Alison Kubota is in the broadcast. She's taking over from Quintin Molinez. She did race the first one. She went toe-to-toe with Tim Fulford on Kayla's mountain track. Now she's back for more. In the last zone, we raced Dark Matter Tech. The speeds were insane. I mean, you're just watching it, and it just kept getting higher and higher and higher. And as soon as you got dropped out of that group, you had to make up for it. Beth also being forced here to use Comeback Kid. This is her second zone of racing, and in the previous one, she really gave everything for her teammates. Carl Axel Sander and Ryan Goldenberg not quite able to convert on the good teamwork, but there'll be more. Now, Sebastian Kuhn as well. With the second race, I think he'll come into it in this one, in this zone. I'll never forget Saturn when we asked him, oh, is there anything left? He goes, no, I have absolutely nothing left. He then proceeds to gap the entire field by about 15-20 seconds on Saturn's circuit complete now, as more racing continues. If you have enjoyed it and you've stuck around from Channel 1, I do thank you from all of us here at the team, both racing and broadcasting and producing it. If you enjoy it, make sure to click that follow button down below as Tim Fulford comes through the group here. He did say he's racing this one as a training zone, so if anyone wants his services as a teammate, you can do so. Quintin is in there. You never know, though. You never know with the mind games that get played in the group as well. We look around. I see Frank Garcia as Tim gets in a gel. Frank Garcia out of the booth onto the bike as he is going to try and put some hurt and some pressure upon the other racers. This is the third race, the third zone in a row, third day of broadcasting where he has commentated Zone K, and then for Zone L he's jumped in. First time he did end up winning Zone L, second time he struggled a bit more. We'll see which of the two it's gonna be today. It's good to see Peter Kastrup is in. Ryan Goldenberg has had his Cocoa Pups. You can see them top right shoulder as his energy conservation there. It might be time to get a new shirt, Ryan. It looks like you've lost some weight from all that CVRcade racing that was flopping, so congratulations on that as well. The power and the getting fit aspect of having fun of CVRcade coming through on the stream. 2.3 kilometers to go. Last race, Ryan was the first one to launch an attack. Tim was there, and then Sebastian Kuhn hit 196 equalized heart rate. He said it was luck. I don't believe him. I think it is muscle memory. I think there's a level of skill that many people sometimes they strike it down as luck. But the more and more you do something, the more it becomes muscle memory. And I think we have a 10-man group once more. We're hitting 55 k's an hour and they're spinning out in the biggest gear possible. And I think it's going to be pretty tough to catch somebody off guard. But with these speeds, what that does mean is that you get a more opportunity to slingshot right through. Because the quicker you go, the more distance you're going to travel. And the biggest issue about going long is that for a very long period of time, you have to travel on your own. Now, of course, the speeds are higher, which means if you don't have a high enough gear, you can't really push any more power. But we see Ben Shuilong back for more. Team CCC, they were dominant for such a long time, but now they seem to struggle a tiny bit. Can they turn the boat around? Sebastian Kuhn goes 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer remaining for Sebastian Kuhn, the judge from Germany, racing for Team Cognition. I think he accidentally used Razor's Edge and now he's committing to it. But this can work. If you just commit to it, you've got 3-4 seconds. I think this attack could work because further back, somebody else has got to do the pacing. We'll look on the front. Sebastian is around the corner, 700 meters, and that voyage is coming to an abrupt end here as Sebastian Kuhn, knowing that he just pressed the wrong button, used the power up, and he goes back out of the group. Frank Garcia, Razor's Edge being committed here from him and Ryan. 400 meters. He wants to get rid of Ryan, but Ryan on the inside, he gets into the draft. Will we see a comeback kid? Peter Castro comes on through on the front. Ryan Goldenberg will second time be the charm. 100 meters remain. Peter on the left, Ryan on the outside. And heartbreak for the Velocity Vixen rider. Peter Castro laying down the law as the other riders come over the line. Alison Kubota. That was a good race. That was a really good sprint. Sebastian opening it early on purpose or not. Ryan, Frank going. Then Peter timing that one. Let's catch it on the instant replay. Up next, once more, we do have Temple Run. Last zone, it was full of crashes. Everyone getting caught off guard by second race not having uncrashable with the wind changing things up. And you see Ryan and Frank, I'm not sure what Frank was trying to do here because he attacks, he goes with it, but as soon as he gets caught, I think he sits back down and realizes maybe that's just a tiny bit too long. 75 kilometers an hour. The momentum differential between Peter and Ryan there just seems to be a tiny bit too much. And Ryan, second time up in the race, second time you initiated one of the moves. You saw Peter come on through. Towards the end, I saw you changing lanes. What were you thinking there?
I was thinking Peter was getting a little bit of benefit being in my draft. Plus, inside lane is shorter at the end there. So I knew he was coming up on me, but I thought maybe that could give me the edge. Turned out he was going too quickly, so well done, Peter.
Now, is this going to be second time around for Velocity Vixen? You had the numbers, you had several riders up in the front group, but Team Cycling Hub and Casey Shum slowly picked you apart one by one. Has there been a regroupment coming into Temple Run? Is there going to be some notes to be going over?
I think what we did last time was good. I think we just got to stick together, help each other out, not get caught up with other riders. And, stay near the front. All sounds easy enough, but just got to execute.
Easy enough. I want to get a word from Sebastian Kuhn, because Sebastian, we saw you attack with Razor's Edge. You put your hand to your face. What happened?
Yeah, to admit, I thought it was the last lap. Yeah, I'm stupid.
Oh, it can happen to the best, Sebastian. It's good to have you back racing. What's your experience been like in Zone K, and are we ready to see more of you here in Zone L?
No, I'm done. The 3-week pause was heavy. I'm not used to this short, high, intense efforts. My legs are dead.
Well, it can happen even to the best, Sebastian. Rest up. And there's more racing again on Saturday. But I gotta admit, seeing you make that mistake thinking it's the last lap, that has made my night. So thank you very much, Sebastian. The racing continues. 1 minute 30 remain. Ben Shuilong is in the broadcast as well. We didn't see much of Ben in the first race. But Ben, you were one of the first racers to crash on Temple Run. Then you crashed again. And I think there was a third and fourth crash in there. What happened in the previous race?
It's like what you said, when you have a crash or two, and then you just lose the focus, and it all goes wrong. So yeah, last time was a disaster. I mean, from start to finish. First race, I tried to hang back and use the comeback kid, but because the speed was so high and everyone had the Razor's Edge that was a total failure. So, yeah, let's forget Zone K and see what happens in this one.
I like that mentality. 40 seconds to go. Good luck to Ben Shuilong. Something they've got on their advantage and on their side as well is that as we get into Zone L, riders will get more and more fatigued. They'll start to feel the efforts of the previous zone, the previous racing. So if you can keep your level head, then you've got a greater chance of winning the racing. But 20 seconds start now. Tim Fulford still just riding around. As we'll see, Team Cycling Hub take to the front here. You got the blue and the orange of Team Cycling Hub. Last race around, there was an attack out of the gun. I think we could see something similar from Frank Garcia of Team CVRcade. You get one Racer's Edge, one Quantum Shift, and I think we could see an attack from the gun. We don't quite do that just yet. Shout out to Vibeke Bertram for racing back-to-back zones as well. Thomas Tibbling is in the racing here. Alison Kubota is in. It's good to see Thomas Tibbling in amongst the racing, but with the wind, you gotta bunch up, you gotta find your teammates as Thomas crashes down further back out of Sweden. CCC, one rider down already. 12 riders make their way to the front. Beth York in the previous race feeling the effort of the previous zone. Now, can her and Ryan continue what they started in the last zone on Temple Run and try and find that magic touch? They gotta try and see if they can get Vibeke up there as we look towards the preferred zones. Homer Thompson, Sebastian Kuhn, Vibeke has this as her preferred zone. Peter Kastrup, Christian Weidman, and René Valides. Those will be the names that we look towards here as the racing kicks up. But you gotta be careful. Beth sticking on the wheel here of Sebastian Kuhn on the insides as the butts move on up. Frank Garcia in second place. Quinton racing back-to-back zones here, so looks like he might want to get optimal points in order to get higher up in the seeding, because the fourth week of this bracketed session, we're currently in week 2, will be a tournament. Here, we're racing for $3,000 for whoever wins it. There's more money all the way down, of course, but first place takes $3,000. That's quite a lot of money that you can put towards a fund of yours to I don't know, spend on whatever you choose. The bots are making it to the front. Robert in the green. Tim on the right-hand side here as he bridges across. I think it might have been a bit of poker from Tim saying he's not racing this one, because now with Quinton in here, they are linking up with Peter Kastrup on the front in the yellow. Peter has been very vocal on the forums as of late, and I think he's going to come into this one wired. I think he's going to want to prove something, and we're going to see if the Flying Dutchman can take that top spot. He's fresh as well. So Tim, Quinton on the side of Peter here now as they come on through. You can crash, and I think Tim is trying to force a mistake out of Peter as Quinton comes on through. This is very, very tense racing, knowing the stakes that are on order, and you've got, that could have been a crash. You see a shake up from Tim. So we get that in a replay. I think that I'm not sure what happened there. You see Peter, you see Tim side by side. Peter, we'll look from the above. I think Peter faces through. He may, I'm not sure what happens there. Speed differential may just be close enough to not crash as Tim comes to the front once more. 3-man breakaway. Quinton Molyneux, Tim Fulford, Peter Kastrup. This is getting very, very tense. Frank further back is trying to make his way back up. He's 4 seconds off the back, and he will get back up. So these 4 riders, what I wouldn't give right now to be in the team buses of the different teams. Understanding the communications that go around. Vibeke crashes once more. Sebastian Kuhn is fighting to get back up as well here as he's in 6th place racing for Team Cognition. Somewhere Moti P. Kelney is writing a motivational message to Sebastian Kuhn saying, come on, you can do it, Seb. Probably with better words than that. Frank Garcia has made it back up to Quinton Molyneux. Tim and Peter on the front. I think Tim is trying to slow down Peter here. Peter's having none of it. And this is next level warfare on the front. They're both chasing the jam. They've got the bread and they want to butter it with some jam on the top. Whether it's raspberry, strawberry, whatever else you put on your bread. I think they're trying to come to that finish line first. to pick the best berries. Quentin down in third. Frank Garcia coming around here and wants to leave Quentin. Doesn't want to get involved in the blocking. Frank does like a bit of blocking. You heard it from the commentary. Not afraid to put out a well-timed block. Peter slows down on the inside. He accelerates again. Tim and Peter side by side. The two team leaders. Team CCC. Team Cycling Hub. I mean, this is going back to like the Lance Armstrong versus Tyler Hamilton. Like, you know, like, I'm there, I'm here, I'm still here. Like, you can just tell the non-verbal communication that's going on now is so aggressive in the way it's being raced. Neither of them giving an inch. But is that it? I don't know, Tim. I don't know. Oh my goodness, what is happening? Oh, I can't believe, like, what you're watching right now, like, you may as well, who needs to watch Friends on TV? Who needs to watch Grey's Anatomy or whatever else TV show you're watching? This is your soap opera. This is your channel of choosing. It does not get better. Frank on the outside. Tim comes on through. Peter slowed down and then accelerate on through. Further back, Allison in sixth, staying well clear as Homer slides on through. She's just rocking in her boat and she's the happy captain there. But on the front, it continues. Tim and Peter. Well, you gotta be careful. Looked like Tim was trying to force a mistake out of Peter on the left side, but didn't get one as he now moves back up. Quentin rides on through. Frank is in second place. He is enjoying this as it's happening, as he gets a relatively nice ride with the rest, as he seems to be the innocent bystander in the midst of all this is happening. So Tim rides on through here on the wheel of Frank Garcia. Quentin on the front. How is Frank looking? 170 equalized heart rate. He looks relatively composed and calm here and fresh as the racing is playing out. And so he's just going to try and get back in. But it's a tough match because you got to get back in, but you also got to keep something in reserve. As Tim comes in the inside, he's got to be careful here. With the weight lifted ability, you do slide out quicker than before. And with the wind changing directions, Tim just making sure that if somebody is to crash, it is Frank and not him. But that's just one lap. We got 2 more laps of this. If you're watching this on demand, Quentin is putting a block. Quentin put a block. Frank Garcia with the racer's edge. Tim with a power up. This looks to be full blown. That is not subtle. That was not. If you're watching this on demand, pause right here. Go refill your popcorn. Go refill your pop, your soda, whatever you're watching, because this is going to get very spicy, and you do not want to go anywhere. Quentin Molyneux got on the front, slammed the brakes, took Peter out, and now Quentin is just further back. Now Peter has to make up that gap, but he's at 197 equalized heart rate. He only has 3 more equalized beats to go before he's at his max heart rate. He looks to be the big loser out of these 4 in the front here, as Quentin already raced 1 zone. He doesn't have much to give. And Frank and Tim, they're going to work together. They have been in breakaways before, and they understand this is Peter's preferred zone. So what you're going to see from Frank and Tim here is that they'll most likely take turns on the front to keep Peter back. But can they keep the Flying Dutchman at bay when the wind is sailing high in the sails? That's going to be the question here. Because not only is Peter strong, but I think this is only adding fuel to the fire, the way in which this race is being raced. Like, Peter, lovely person. But when this sort of racing happens, I think something just switches with the Flying Dutchman. I think it's like when a bull sees red. It's like, okay, if that's how it's going to be, here are the gloves. Now they're coming off. Let's go. And that's what we're seeing. Peter Castro at 200 equalized heart rate. Unfortunately for Peter, unless he can really recover here, he's going to struggle. Because I think as soon as this happens now, watch, I think Tim is getting ready to do a counterattack. You're going to see him stand up and say, right, you're back, but you had to spend a lot of energy. You're not going to get time to rest, and you are going to have to go again. 200. He just goes, no, you know what? 204 being pushed to new limits. Aye, Captain, says Peter Kastrup, and he just doesn't even care. 650 equalized watts. He is off the front. Now, what's happening to Frank? Frank's in third place. Quinton is still fighting on. Allison with a fantastic ride here in Temple Run. You gotta give it to her as well. She's in fifth and she's making it the way up. She's having a stellar performance. It looks like Allison is riding for her teammate Sebastian Kuhn down here. So shout out to Cognition. Great team spirit. Great team all around with Moti. You'll see him later in Zone T tonight as more racing. We'll just do our due diligence. Ben Shuilong broadcasting in CCC. You can see the sweat slowly getting to him, but I think he's happy to be out here in the cold and up front in the furnace at this point, as Sebastian Kuhn down in 8th is just riding on. He's still fighting in there, but that 3-week hiatus is starting to tire on the legs. 205 from Peter Kastrup. Tim, 191. Power-ups are Razor's Edge and Quantum Shifts. You've seen some being used already. Meanwhile, Peter is just going off the front. 360 equalized watts, and the gap is gaining. Homer Thompson does crash. Christian Weidman does crash, and with 4 seconds is the difference. I wonder if Tim ever sits up, because with Frank chasing on, who is a valuable ally to have in a 2-up group, with Quinton chasing on, you can sit up and wait. And what's actually happening here is that composed group further back with Ben Shuilong, they've got a chance of coming back here. Because with all this racing, with all this looking around going, no, you're not, no, you're not, no, you're not. Well, what Ben is saying, yes, I can do. I'm not going to stop it. So Ben is going to use his Racer's Edge. First target is Quinton Molyneux. And I do think he can get back on terms with him. And then you've got Alison Kubota, Sebastian Kuhn, Christian Weidman further down, who, if they all work together as a unit, we've seen this before, especially with Team CVRcade. If you work together as a unit, you can kind of save energy and go quicker than the front. But Tim has made connection with Peter on the front. Peter's heart rate is down, and we'll see what happens now. The two of them, Peter, will start again. Frank has been a casualty in this war between these two team leaders on the front, as Frank has been dropped out of the group. And Tim has got two choices here. He can either apply the pressure on Peters, which we're seeing him do now, 1,000 equalized watts. He wants to just get rid of Peter and try to force a mistake, because Peter does have a love-hate relationship with crashing on CVRcade. We've seen him crash a few times. He even has a corner on mountain bike by Jesper named after him after crashing several times. So what Tim is doing here is that on the descent is where Tim is the most lethal. He knows every corner, he does his homework, straight A student. Peter, in the meanwhile, only knows by racing. He only practices when it's go time, when it's race time. So he only knows roughly, like he's a B student, he roughly knows every corner speed, and so he's more careful on the brakes. Meanwhile, Tim will push it to the limit, and if Peter just barely goes over that limit, game over. As we're seeing now! Oh, this is what we're talking about. Tim Fulford, mission accomplished, but it's far from over. Peter Kastrup being applied that. You can see the pressure literally talking on the screen as Tim is just trying to push him. And Peter not knowing the corners, you can see the facial reaction as we realize that Peter Kastrup has gone down. 8 seconds is the gap. But where Peter is going to gain some of it back is the incline. Meanwhile, Frank is not giving up here. Frank is riding to his own tempo. And 8 seconds back on Tim. He could very well get back. What will Peter do? Peter is starting to do the Peter Kastrup method, it looks like. Accelerating, sitting back down, but there isn't much left in the tank here. If we go back to Peter Kastrup, he's still trying, he's still fighting away. He's 13 seconds back, but mentally, how much is there? You've just had a massive tumble. You've extended so much energy. You feel like the world is against you. Do you have it? And it looks like the answer is, I'm gonna try. And that's what he's doing now. 13 seconds is the difference as Frank Garcia now tries to bridge the gap, but that's going to be a tough task to get back up to Tim at this point. And the best thing is we've got 2 more races on our hands. We've got Chaos Mountain Track and we've got Sudden Lane Change. Now, depending on how Peter spends his energy, the way he's racing this, how fresh he looks, how determined he looks, he has got to be one of the favorites for the low skill event. The event where you cannot crash, it looks like he'll be a force to be reckoned with. But then there's Sudden Lane Change come the end. Tim giving a masterclass on it. I think this is going to be a really interesting finish. Further back down, Ben Shuilong is still riding away. He is grinding, as you can see, just pushing the pedals. Allison Kubota, Sebastian Kuhn, great teamwork, great image here for Team Cognition. Moti, Luis Obranis, Sadeo Ikebe, and Daniel LeBlanc, they'll all be happy with what they're seeing from their team leader and their teammate out on course. I do love Cognition. They're a very good bunch of riders, but on the front, meanwhile, Frank, 3 seconds is the gap. I think Tim, I'm not sure, I don't think Tim he might be waiting here. I'm not sure what's happening. He might just be waiting for Frank as they get back up, and then the 2 of them will try and work together. I think Tim is realizing at this point that he needs help from Frank. 2 of them together need to take turns and keep the speed high, because the way Peter is riding and with how much he's really feeling this one, I think he will manage to bridge the gap, but the question is, the descent, that's coming up soon as well. That's going to start to hurt. But here comes the siege of the Flying Dutchman. 195 equalized heart rate. The gap is down to 5 seconds. And now he will not go below 367 equalized watts. He's going to just apply the pressure. Frank's on the right, Tim's on the left. They're both doing their work on the front here to try and keep the pace high in the breakaway. Quentin is 10 seconds back. Everybody's so close. Like, everybody within each other. But here we look now. Peter Kastrup in 3rd place. We go first person view. That's how close he is. He has to be careful though. He's pushing every single corner. He could crash here. Like, you see him recklessly swinging right, recklessly swinging left. There's no indicator. There's no mirror over the shoulder. He just wants his one out. I think Tim is going to try and stay ahead of him here. But how will this pan out? Peter is at 205 equalized heart rate. It cannot go much higher. Frank Garcia goes on the attack. Tim Fulford goes on the attack. They must be in audio communication. The way that was synchronized, that looks to be teamwork. That looks to be a collaboration between the 2 of them now as Tim comes over the top. This is the last lap. This is it for Temple Run. This is such a high scoring multiplier. And Peter goes down again. This is what we're talking about. You can raise your heart out, you can go so fast, but with the ability that is weightlifted, with the corner swaying left and right, you gotta feel the waves. And what Peter does, he cuts right through it, he crashes, and this time I don't think there's a fairy tale ending for the Dutch prince. He might even get caught by Quentin Molyneux further back. But we turn our eyes on the front. Tim Fulford versus Frank. You'd think Frank is more fresh, so the advantage would fall to him, but the way the 2 have raced, I think it's looked good. Peter does have Racer's Edge. Peter is forced to use Racer's Edge here. 201 equalized heart rate. He's got a chance, but he's not applying the pressure. Now, he may just be scared of the corner speed. He may just ride scared all the way to the end. If I was Peter, I would just take my 3rd place here, come into Chaos Mountain Track and race that one hard, because now you're spending a lot of energy. Sebastian Kuhn further back down as well, trying to get back up. But the fight for first is on. Tim and Frank can change spots on the podium. Not sure if there's a deal amongst them here. They're working together. Tim waited for Frank, and so we'll see. I don't think both of them are racers. They both want this victory equally, and they understand the threat. But now, Tim is just sitting on the front. Tim just sitting in 400 equalized watts, looking at Frank saying, if you're not going to come around, I'm not going to do anything here. And now, 1.5k to go. I counted Peter out. It looked like it wasn't going to be a Cinderella ending story for him, but you never know if the pumpkin may show up last minute or not. 8 seconds is the gap. 1.4 kilometers remain. Frank sitting back. Tim sits up. How will this pan out? Racer's Edge still remains, I believe, for one of these two riders, if not both of them. So that will be an advantage. Peter, in the meanwhile, the gap is growing in a different direction. He's so afraid of this descent now that he's just playing it safe. So those are the scores that you've got to cover. You watch Tim now. Tim versus Frank. This is it. The final kilometer. Side by side they go. They've worked together, but now that cooperation has got to come to an end. Frank's at 179, Tim's at 168, so the heart rates have come down. Frank's on the inside, Tim's on the outside, each side of the bench, and now Peter out of the equation. He's even going to get caught by Quinton Molyneux, and I think by the end of this, Peter Castro may end down in 5th or 6th, but the fight remains on the front between Team CVRcade and Team Cycling Hub. Frank's on the wheel, Tim's on the left. It's a chess match now. A chess match. Who takes the first move? Who makes the first mistake amongst these two? Advantage is Frank. He's in the wheel of Tim, and I think both of them have Racer's Edge. But they slow down, they look around, they know the threat is no longer there. We're going to stay on this view for the sprint because we want to see both of them, both their perspectives. Frank moves on through, but this is advantage to Tim because Tim is going to get the inside line out of that sprint. But again, that goes both ways. That's a double-edged sword because if he goes too quick, he's going to crash into Frank. Frank accelerates through the corner and then he crashes. Oh, robbed of a great A sprint. Frank taking the outside line. Tim forward, crosses over the line. I think he's waiting. He's taking himself out and letting. Yeah, he lets Frank come over the line. I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to hear what the words were shared there, as Quinton also takes points. Quinton passed before Tim. What's going on? Sebastian in 4th, Ben in 5th. Shout out to all the racers. What we just watched was absolutely insane on all levels, and I cannot wait for the aftermath. But before that can happen, we need this racing. Ryan is in 7th, and with Homer and Vibeke. Let's see if I can tell. So Tim sits up here, and he's going to let Quinton and Frank pass on through. Frank takes the win. Quinton gets 2nd place. Peter now still in 2nd overall, but with the 16 bonus points, he's going to look good further up. But what a race. What a race. That goes down in CVRcade World Cup Racing legend, because that has not really been seen before in the way in which Tim sits up and lets Frank come through. Quinton catches Peter as well, and it doesn't look like Seb manages to catch Peter on the end, but Quinton takes valuable points away. Congratulations, Frank. That looked a bit dicey out on course. What was your perspective of the racing as it unfolded?
Was my perspective. That was hard. Obviously, some grudge matches going down. And I was just trying to hang in. And me and Tim, we've ridden a lot together. We weren't in comms. But I think he's probably, like I'm on the last Omnium, someone else can have this Omnium. I appreciate the gesture. We'll see if I can deliver on these next tracks. Because, I'm a bit fatigued. Peter was going great. Definitely highly motivated, by the way. So a great race by him. Unfortunate that he got caught in a couple of the corners. I was very nervous of that myself.
It looked so intense, and with the way the racing was unfolding, it looked like it was really tough, so I don't blame that you're fatigued, Frank. I want to get a word from Tim, because Tim, you were very, very animated throughout that race. We don't often see you this emotional. What brought that out?
Basically, I said I'd support Q, and I had a chat with Frank earlier. And just the way that some people ride it, it's just like, I just don't get it. So in the end, I'll just end up being animated and have fun with them. I said to Frank at the top of the climb when one of our opponents had crashed again, that he could have it. So I kind of hold my promise on that and gave it to him. And luckily, my teammate came through in 10 seconds. So I'm cool with that. Good racing, good exercise. Now this one, which is just horrible.
Yeah, you get to do it again. You did win the last time. I'll let you catch your breath because I want a word from the CCC camp. We've got Ben who's in here, who I'm not sure is in contact with Peter. But how is CCC feeling after that race, Ben?
I'm exhausted. And I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not looking forward to this one. This is the most painful one, as Tim said. So. I don't know. Peter's doing really well, so he's top dog for this zone. So we'll see what we can do, and if I can help, great. And that's all I can do. I'm fully shot now, so.
I don't blame you, Peter, as well. Sorry, Ben. You heard it from Frank. It's so tough to race some of these courses, but they're good fun. I will let you find the fun and the amusing bit of the next race as it starts in 30 seconds. Good racing, Ben. Temper's Flare. I mean, we saw this beginning in Fantastic Alien Sea last week. It's not often you see Casey Shum making all sort of hand movements, and I think this is only getting brought more and more forward as the money comes ever closer. And the 4th week, if you have not clicked follow, if you have not clicked that follow button down below, that 4th week, when the money's on the line and somebody's getting blocked for $3,000, you will want to watch that here in CVRcade World Cup, because that will be like just amazing to watch. And of course I say that with a grain of salt, as somebody will end up losing at the end of the day, but makes for interesting racing. Tim on the front here, he finds himself in front of Thomas Tibbling as they enter the climb. Ryan Goldenberg with a good result in the last race. He's finding himself in 4th place here as he blocks Quentin Molyneux, and you see a bit of that what comes around goes around as Ryan now I'm not like, he's just blocking everybody now. It is on like Donkey Kong. He lets one rider through, he lets Christian Whiteman through, but Ryan Goldenberg saying, okay, if we're gonna play ping pong, let me bring the biggest bat here. I think he's trying to wait for Velocity Vixen. He's got Vibeke Bertram further back. But you can point to your jersey all you want. Blocking is blocking regardless. And you see now the blocking happen as Quentin once tries to go through. And then everybody else tries to go through. And it's just fascinating. Like, the way the game is being played and how it's evolving is so interesting and fascinating. And you can talk about the psychology aspects. You can talk about the sociology aspects of what you expect from other riders and how it affects you. And oh my goodness, is it just first class reality TV as Frank Garcia in 7th place here. Slightly overcooked from the last race, I would imagine, but he will try to save points in this one, and coming into sudden lane change, that's where he'll make up the majority of his points. That's where he's the favorite, and he knows it, but he still needs to save points on this one. Sebastian Kuhn is in 7th place. When you look at the scoreboard, even though the 4 riders are up the front, Sebastian's out the back, Peter, Frank, Christian, Quentin, Tim, Ryan, even to some degree Seb, are all within reach of each other. And, like, preferred zones, Seb has it, Vibeke has it, Peter has it, and Christian Weitman has it. So Peter is in a big advantage here on the front, but once more at 200 equalized heart rate. We got 3 riders off the front. Ryan looking bewildered at the screen, probably looking for Vibeke Bertram down in 6 to try and get her back up. But how will this pan out? Christian Weitman here with a great race, a great ride, but the pre-race favorite in this race, Peter Kastrup, is up there. The way he raced the last race, the raw power of the legs, he definitely got the motivation and the skills. But now Tim Fulford is coming back up, slowing down, allowing the different races through. But how much does he have left? This is a course that every single lap you've got to sprint up this hill, and it just saps out your legs. And there's a wind, meaning you've got to position yourself accordingly as well. So it just gets tougher and tougher and tougher. Ryan tries to get in the draft here as Tim, Peter go on through. Christian Weidman in first. Christian, I mean, we've had Christian on stream once or twice in the past. He's excellent when he's on the broadcast. Now racing as well. We can only imagine, you know, the long distance camera he's got, riding away, Team X kid. And he's representing very well here, considering he raced Zone K as well. He's currently 3rd. It's his preferred zone. 16 points added to it. And See if he can beat the rest. Meanwhile, Frank Garcia down in 12th. He's with the butts. He's second place overall, and I think Frank is here taking a calculated approach to the racing. I'm second on the Omnium. Frank usually races for the Omnium and not so much the individual stage wins. And when it comes to that, it's about consistency, but also playing to your strengths. The last race is sudden lane change. Frank, you saw him congratulate Casey, Carl, Tim on the way they rode it because they did very well. And he said the way Tim was racing it was a masterclass. Well, wait to see when Frank Garcia gets there. But the name of the game until we get there is, can I save enough energy? Christian here has an 8-second gap to go off the front. So he is getting an advantage, and I don't think anybody's too excited to chase it down. Ryan trying to explain that he was blocking for Vibeke. Well, now he's on the front, and Vibeke is still 5 seconds back. She is in 10th place on the Omnium. So Velocity Vixen here is having an interesting dynamic play out as Christian is just going to continue to extend his gap. The power-ups once more are Razor's Edge and Quantum Shift. Peter accelerates. Will Tim and Ryan be on it? On the incline here, you do see a bit of a move as Tim moves on the right, side by side with Ryan Goldenberg. The two have found themselves racing quite a lot together recently, and now Tim strikes. He wants to bridge across. Will there be a counter move? No Ryan, no Peter, no nothing there. And he goes, as Ryan now, very late, does come back and has the momentum. The continuance over the top from Ryan brings him right back and on through as Peter Kastrup is still there. Ryan Goldenberg, Velocity Vixen, Tim Fulford. Meanwhile, further back, Frank still has to contend with Quinton, Ben, Thomas, Homer. So sitting in with the butts, and it's a great decision, but you still got to save those points as the other riders will be hungry for more. On the screen, you've got Tim in the UK. It's dark. Christian on the front uses Razor's Edge. You've got on the right Ryan Goldenberg in Canada, where it is very, very light outside. Now, they have to figure out how do they play this. Ryan has just consistently sat in the front. He hasn't really swung around. He hasn't let anyone come through and take a gap. And I think that may just be to control the pace of suffering. Because I think he knows that if you allow Peter or Tim to come on through, they're going to significantly increase the pacing. And there goes Tim. Tim goes up. Ryan tries to follow here as he understands you cannot let Tim get a gap. Ryan further back. Peter Kastrup on the wheel. 194 equalized heart rate. I feel for Christian at this point because Christian is in he's in a great position. He's in the position you want to be, but it could be heartbreak come the very end. Because if Ryan, Peter, or Tim get a gap and they just hammer time it, then I think unfortunately for Christian, these three have the capacity to go over equalized for a certain amount of time to really dig deep and push that I think they could catch up to Christian Weidman here. But we'll see. Still more racing to come. 13 seconds is the gap as Tim enjoys the rest on the descent. Sebastian Kuhn is making his way back and making his way up the leaderboard. This is his preferred zone. He's getting all the bonus points. 16 points as well for his preferred zone. All the bonus points for streaming. So he's not to be counted out yet. He's technically at 106 points, so tied with Christian Weidman. He passes the rest, used his power up and comes through Tim, and now onto the incline. I love it. When Sebastian says he's out of legs, it's usually when he's holding aces. So he's got his bluff. Tim Fulford first to match. Vibeke Bertram out the back. Ryan Goldenberg. Once more, he finds himself being forced to react to this on the incline. Peter has just sat in for... Not sat in, but he's been on the wheel of Ryan for this entire time. I wonder if Peter came around and went over the top, if he'd be able to do more, but the effort that he had to produce on Temple Run has got to hurt as well. As more racing continues. 2.2 Ks to go. Christian has just crossed the start-finish banner, and a block gets put on. I'm not sure whether that was intentional, but Sebastian, tiny bit of a block there on the rest. If we have that on the replay, that'd be interesting to dissect and see exactly what happened there. So Sebastian slowing down to 28-29. That must have been something as Ryan gets caught up. It could be payback for previously in the race Sebastian rules in the favor of Team Cognition, but Peter Castro, Vibeke Bertram's coming back. Now Ryan, Quantum Shift, I think he wants through and enough with the shenanigans, Quantum Shift, and Sebastian is right there with him. It is such an interesting zone of racing. Zone K, very, very, oh, Peter Castro! Oh, and then Ryan, what's happening? Ladies and gentlemen, what is happening? It is my job to tell you what is happening, and even I am like, what is happening? That is when the racing gets very interesting on the front. Vibeke Bertram pushes on through. So Ryan, whether intentional or not, Quantum Shift through, braked, bring Vibeke back through the group, and now they've worked up. So Velocity Vixen with some great teamwork and strategy there as they get back up to each other. But now they've got to work together because further up the road, Christian has a significant gap. Tim Fulford is in there in second place now as he's suffering. The window behind him wide open, showing off a new haircut as he is rocking away. He does not want Vibeke and Ryan to get back. Tim could very well get more racing, but this all benefits the man back with the butts. Frank is looking around, seeing the changes at the top of the leaderboard, and he now leads as Peter regains that lead. But it's all in the balance, and Frank right now saving the energy, sticking with the bots, and just working with them. He is in a great position coming into the last race. Tim Fulford rocking on through. Peter once more, I think he just changes one lane over. We see Peter in the yellow. Oh, we got Ryan on the front. Ryan slowing down Peter here once more. He's trying to keep his teammate back. It is not Peter Castro's day. He will mark this down in the diary going, "Dear diary, today was not my day. Good night." And now Peter Castro goes on the front as Ryan gets Sebastian as well. Oh my goodness. Ryan returning the serve to Sebastian Kuhn, slams on the door and he accelerates through. But this is all in the name of the game for Vibeke Bertram. 500 meters in the front. The Dane is coming on through now, and Peter Castro is at 210 equalized heart rate. He's feeling it. And on the last incline, Tim Fulford with Racer's Edge wants to try and see if he can get the victory. Can he catch Christian Weidman with a Racer's Edge? It's a tough task. 300 meters to go. It will not be the case. Further back, Peter Castro has had enough. Quantum Shift through, Racer's Edge. He's going to try as well, but points in the end will go astray. It's going to come down to sudden lane change. Meanwhile, Christian Weidman with Bao, perfect racing. Granted a wish by the genie, Ryan Goldenberg. Ryan was slamming the door. Then the doorman said, "Let me check your ID. Yes, you can pass. I will allow you to go on in." Tim, second place. Vibeke will be third, depending on what Peter Kastrup does. But Vibeke coming through the line, she's got a 3-second gap, and she will take third place. Peter Kastrup fourth, Sebastian Kuhn in fifth. As Ryan is fighting out for secondary positions, he's got Quantum Shift, but the sprint for the line is going to be so close. I think Sebastian takes it by less than a tire width as he leans on over. Nothing left. Ben crosses the line. Good racing. The next race starts in 3 minutes and 24 seconds as we just caught the end of Ben Shuilong as he realized, I've got nothing left. Sun lane change is coming up. It's going to be 6 laps. It's going to be uncrashable, Razor's Edge, and once more it will come down to the 4th and final race of the day. This one is going to get dicey. There are some tempers that are going to flare because anyone can win. 1st through 6th, even through 7th can win this one. And that means everybody is going to be wired up and ready to go. Now we'll get a word from the racers. We're going to go talk to Frank first before we talk with those in the front, because Frank took a very different approach to the last race. Frank, when and how did you decide, right, I'm just going to try and save some energy in this race?
When my leg said no go.
Well,
so it was pretty simple. No brilliant tactics. Just didn't have the legs in that one, and didn't have to push it really. Ben got me to sprint at the end, which may pay off for them in CCC. But generally, I'm 0.2 behind, so it's as it should be. You got to win to win.
Now you got to win on sudden lane change. You saw Casey, you saw Tim. The competition is getting stiffer on these sort of courses. Do you feel comfortable coming into this one?
Well, this plays to my advantage. It's probably one of Peter's weaknesses in terms of not crashing, right? So I wouldn't normally say advantage Frank, and I'm pretty tired, but I think from if I was commentating, I'd say advantage Frank here.
Oh.
Now that being said, I'd be watching out for Tim. Tim, really a master class with the wind on this in the last zone. And if I was a commentator, I'd probably pick Tim.
I'm not sure if that's the commentator's curse coming through on both of you. We'll see how that plays out. Speaking of which, Tim, Frank's got you in the books for this one. He thinks you will come on through. You did do very well to come back from an early crash. You're going to need to perform on this one to take a second preliminary Omnium win. Are you going to do it?
No, I don't know, Jesper. This one's fun. You don't need massive legs for this. You need some sprints, but I'm just here to rip some legs off, and I've already won one Omnium tonight, so we'll have some fun. If I crash, I crash. But I've had some fun tonight, so that's what it's all about.
That's all that matters. I can hear you talking to the team. I'll let you get back to it. Final word, Ryan. We saw some blocking in the last race. What were you trying to tell us when you were pointing to the shot?
So right before the event started, I came up with an idea. Didn't end up working out, but I was hoping I could sort of keep the riders back in lanes 1 and 2. And I told Beth and Vibeke to go ahead in lane 3. Didn't quite work out that way. Yeah, that was the idea. And then later in the race, I was just working for Vibeke, trying to keep Peter and Sebastian off of her. It looked like it was pretty close between Peter and Vibeke at the end. I think Vibeke pulled it out. So I guess at the end of the day, the result kind of worked out, even if the one tactic didn't.
20 seconds to go. Good luck, Ryan. We'll see if any more brilliantly master plan strategies are going to come out for 4th place in the racing, but you'll leave that to Velocity Vixen, somewhat of a chef special in the house as the racing begins. Out of the gun, Tim, Frank, Peter, even Christian, Quentin, Sebastian have got a chance right from the gun. Tim is winding it up. Frank with Uncrashable early on here. Uncrashable, Racer's Edge. Very, very early Uncrashable, because this means it will run out prior to the corner. Peter has gone down early on. The pre-race leader at the top has gone down, crashing. This is a tough course, especially with the wind, and from 1st to 6th, just like that. Frank on the front. Sebastian, Quentin are there, but Frank is leading by about 30 points down to 2nd place. Quentin doing back-to-back zones. Vibeke crashes, but back-to-back zones here from some of these racers are starting to hurt. Frank without any power-ups, and perhaps the Uncrashable in a suboptimal way being used there as well. We'll see what happens. Sebastian Kuhn chases on. He's on the left, and Quentin slides through. They get safely. One long line they go. Wind at their back. Vibeke goes down again. Frank crashes as well. He thinks he's safely on through, but these corners, they come quick. And just like that, Quentin Molyneux is now in the lead, and as we mentioned before, it can all change in the blink of an eye. Christian can get to the top. Tim can get to the top as well. And you bring in the bonus points. Sebastian does have 16. But speaking of which, oh, the emotion that comes on through. He knows he made a mistake, and so does Quentin this late in. And Christian Whiteman goes, "Thank you very much, sir. I will take the lead." But he's got to be careful, because that lead may be no more. He's got Tim Fulford chasing him in 2nd place here with 3.6 kilometers to go. Team Experimental Rider having a bit of a breakthrough performance here with a win in the prior race. But now Tim is just going to pounce on this straight away. He dodges the pylons, and he's going to go right on through. He's going to be forced to slow down here, but the pacing behind is speeding up as well. Ryan is there. Quentin is there. Frank is coming back up. Tim has got to be careful here with how the turns work out as well. But we look with Ryan in 3rd. He still has power-ups. Christian has power-ups. Tim has power-ups. Frank has used his. But now Quentin moves on the inside. 3.2 kilometers remain as Tim continues to put the pressure on. Beth goes down. And now we look around. I try to look at the scoreboard. Tim has regained the lead at this point. But side by side, Christian Whiteman on the left, Tim on the right. They're fighting for the top spot with Quentin Molyneux also up there. And it's going to come down to whoever wins this one. Frank will be regretting that early crash. He was in a good position to win. But with that crash, it all changes. But we look. Pylons once more. The speed, thanks to the wind at your back ability, really changes things here. As you gotta be careful. Quentin just splits down the middle. And oh, he comes right on through. Excellent gameplay. And it's just evolving. Like everyone understanding the corner speeds. And with it being such a short lap, you just know all corner speeds. Because you do the same corners again and again and again. And with this speed, you get there earlier. And now Quentin is at the front. Christian second. And like that, Tim goes into third. But what about Frank Garcia? On Country Rally, he says you can gain about 10 seconds a lap. What about sudden lane change? How much time can you gain? Ryan is the first victim. He's on the left, Frank on the right. But is he going too quickly? He slides down in time. Ryan bumps. Frank moves on up. That puts him into third place. If he can catch one more rider up, will he move up the podium? He'll get 5 more points. It will not be enough. He'll need to catch Tim 4 seconds up the road. And we'll see as Quentin once more putting on a masterclass of sudden lane change. 4.5 points up. Christian Whiteman does have this as a preferred zone. So 16 points to him. Which puts him tied with Quentin at this current time. Tied at the front at 180 points. Everything just keeps on changing as this course, sudden lane change, it should be named sudden scoreboard change. Everything just keeps moving around. Frank on the right, Tim on the left. Two of the masters of sudden lane change here with 1.5 to go. Tim applying the pressure. He's out to rip some legs off. He's succeeded, but can he rip the final few legs off? He understands his job now. He needs to not let Christian, not let Frank pass him. But Frank is on the hunt. 1.3 kilometers remain. Frank has got Christian Whiteman, but catching him will not move him up on the podium. It will solidify his third place, but it won't move him up. He leads 2 points ahead of Christian, but Quentin has got a good gap. Peter Castro has crashed again. It's just not been his race today. It's not been his overall omnium. Now, we'll look back and Frank in third place has caught Christian and gone through. Now, to the disadvantage of Frank, Tim still has his power-ups. We saw what he could do with him last zone, and now it's panning out the same way. The bot gets through. Frank has to be careful. He gets lucky as Howard does not choose the left lane, and Frank crashes. Oh, he gets stuck looking at Chien. Oh, my goodness. Let's watch that again. As on the replay, he dodges one butt. He gets lucky with Howard here. You see Howard on the right. He doesn't move. Then he's like, yes, I didn't crash. Then he looks at Chien. Which lane is Chien gonna land on? And he just presses it. Oh, that hurt. Oh, that's hurt. And he goes in third, down to fourth. 400 meters remain. Ryan is giving everything here to try and catch up to Christian Whiteman. But will Uncrashable run out? No. He's got one more corner, but 5 seconds remain. Ben Shuilong, hats off to the Brit for Team CCC. Riding a good sudden lane change here. It's good to see him have some success here in the Omnium. Tired legs, but the mind stays engaged as he rocks on through. But on the front, oh, Quentin hits the back of Vibeke, but it won't matter. Last 100 meters, Quentin Molyneux seems to have won the Omnium, I believe, on the day. Again, this is a waiting official results. This is all preliminary. Officials assault on cycle data. Christian Whiteman pushes Tim to the wire here, but Tim takes second, Christian third. Ryan versus Frank here for secondary position is going to be close, but Frank does slide out into the back of Ryan. Frank will whoop. Just be looking at that crash, thinking of what could have been. Sebastian Kuhn with a great race. Ben Shuilong with a great race. Sebastian, that one mistake earlier on. He will end 7th on the podium preliminary. I think he'll move a spot up or two. Beth has... what? What? Oh, I can't believe I'm sorry, Beth. We were missing out on some quality content. I think she's wrapping up as she's fighting with Peter here. We'll catch the finish of these two as to the line. Peter once more stacks it on the left. She says, see ya. And she can pop her power-ups. Let's catch the replays. Because the racing today, I mean, what did we just watch for the last 2 hours? That was insane. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. And if you did, click that follow button down below. These racers, I mean, their emotions are on full display. What they're feeling is what you're like seeing on the screen. As here we catch Quinton cross the line in first. Preliminary, he wins the day. Tim in second. Christian in third. Christian giving Tim a run for his money towards the finish line. But I want to have a word with some of the riders because this looked tough. Tim, 2 races, 2 zones here. I think Cycling Hub taken 1 and 2 today. Is this a proud moment for you as a team captain?
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, I don't know what happened in that last race. Christian rode it brilliantly, and then Quinton came out of nowhere, and I realised when I looked at the scoreboard, if I came second, Quinton won overall. So, great racing all around. It's just those abilities, and the wind just changed everything.
How about this going forward? Because we did see some aggressive racing today. Do you think this will have repercussions coming into Saturday, into the tournament? How do you think this is going to evolve now?
I think it's brilliant. I mean, it's bike racing, isn't it? But it's indoors, and you've got to steer in other ways. You've got to deploy tactics. At the end of the day, every different team has different strengths, and therefore will deploy tactics to make those strengths accentuated or multiplied, and I think that's what's happening, and it's brilliant, and it's really building on the gameplay.
To get, thanks Tim, and congratulations for both you and Quinton. Brilliant racing, thanks for racing both zones as well. I know how tough that can be. Frank, the emotion on your face when you crashed, I mean, you were there, the uncrashable, was that planned, the uncrashable, or was that just fat fingering?
No, that was planned. I wanted to get out front. I got out front. I slid in a corner, and it messed my rhythm up. So I crashed, and then I was just like, okay, just stay focused. You got 6 laps. You can get back in. And I was like, I'm back in. I'm going to do this. No, I'm not. Great racing today. I hope everybody left it out on the field. Trash talking, grudge matches, people going stupid hard, super motivated. But I hope everybody walks to midfield and shakes hands. This is a true sport. We see that in the emotions that are coming through. It's so much fun. Like, I crashed, it's frustrating. I was tired, then I had energy in the last race, just because, you're there, you have a shot at it. There's the rivalries forming, there's the, unions or, alliances forming, and it just feels like a real sport. It feels like bike racing, but with a little, football, and sort of the one with the foot, not the NFL variety. But it's just like, I just had a great time today. It was just incredibly fun.
I can echo that. It's not very often. I am lost for words, but it happened on numerous occasions. So congratulations to the racers. That is just insane. Thank you, Frank. I want to go through all the highlights with you before we end it, because the racing today, as Frank said, has just been so much fun. Zone K brought a different vibe to Zone L, and tonight we have more racing in Zone T as well, where Moti, Luis Sobraniz, Jennifer Garcia, Frank Garcia, and so on return with Alison Kubota as well. But here, the story of the day, I think we look towards the different teams and how they attack the racing, because you heard Tim say it, every team has a different approach to racing. Teams like CCC, Velocity Vixen, Velocity Vixen not so much, but still to a similar extent, they're more proactive. Can we be, as a happy camper unit, can we get up there? Now, other teams, CVRcade, Cycling Hub, they're not afraid to put in some different alternative strategies to really mix up the racing. And And that's what makes the racing so fun. You have riders of all different mentalities, all different backgrounds coming into this, expecting different things. And that is why we're seeing the emotions flare. That's why we're seeing the aggressive racing. That's what we're seeing when somebody goes down like, no! Because not only do they want to win, they want to beat the guy next to them. They want to help their teammate beat the guy next to them. And then, of course, when all the racing is over, as Frank said, you go to midfield, you shake your hands with the referees, with the opponents, and you go back and, you know, you have a beverage, you have whatever you want as a drink as Casey crashes. And that's what makes it so fun. I mean, it's just so much vested interest from everybody. Blood, sweat, and tears go into this game, and the outcome is fun. The outcome is better fitness, and the outcome is also rewardment in terms of money. But it just ups the stakes, and you see riders push out more power than they ever have before, especially on the Temple Run race today. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I liked having the second race with crashing. As we see Tim crash here, some riders not really prepared for it, some racers feeling the pressure, especially in that second zone with Peter Kastrup, Quentin texting with Tim here. I think they're just strategizing here who to take the victory. And in the end, it did cost Tim Fulford the Omnium based on bonus points, I do believe. Again, keep an eye on cycle data and watch as the bonus points do get added. They make a big difference. And they are a vital part of the CVRcade World Cup. Now, Kayla's mountain track. It was changed around today. I enjoyed watching this. And Ryan Goldenberg and Beth York trying their best to get Velocity Vixen up there. They had the numbers today. Velocity Vixen, especially on Temple Run, they had the numbers. They had, they were missing Jeff Rooney, of course, today, but they had Vibeke Bertram, they had Carl Axel Sander, Ryan Goldenberg, Beth York. They had all the riders up there, but you can have all the pieces, but if you can't see the full puzzle, it doesn't come on through. Casey almost catches back up to Tim and Allison. But it wasn't meant to be for Casey as Tim takes the victory. Sudden lane change, early crash for Quentin, early crash for Tim. They had to make it back up. But masterclasses in how to race this course were on display here as you watch them come on through. Early deficits, early losses can be made up if you focus, if you keep your mind concentrated and just react from the gun here. You see Tim, every corner, he knows what he's got to do. I actually think Tim did take the winner. I think Tim took the Omnium. Sorry, I forgot for a second. The two Omniums blend together. This is where Carl Axel Sander stacked it in the very final corner, which gave Tim the victory. So Temple Run did not cost him, but with so much racing, with so many storylines, at times it can be tough to keep them all archived in alphabetical order. As Casey thumbs up, thinks he's got it, but then little does he know, Tim Fulford, the wrecking ball, comes in, goes, Carl, I'm coming for you, and Carl could hear the knocking on the door and quite wasn't prepared for it. Tim takes the Omnium win based on bonus points. So now this got spicy. Sebastian Kuhn somehow thought that was the final lap of racing, so 3-week hiatus. It's good to have Sebastian back. Love watching him race, but a mistake like that is very uncharacteristic. Now Frank, with fresh legs, had just commentated Zone K in the racing here, wanting to spice things up, and Racer's Edge was a new addition today, and that really spiced things up again. So, as always with the CVRcade racing, you never quite know what you're gonna get. Every day is a new cookie, and you never quite know how it's gonna crumble. Today, it crumbled in the way of Peter Kastrup. Tim, never so visibly emotional on screen. Not once, but twice. We see him raise his hands up in frustration and protest here, as once more you can see it. Peter Kastrup will be interesting to get his point of view of the racing, what happens going forward, because this of course will be highly discussed in the Riders Forum, the place to be for all your latest information on CVRcade. I think that what got to Peter ultimately today wasn't the racing and how it unfolded. It was the amount of homework. Now, of course, he was up against it, but it was by far out. The strongest racer today was Peter Kastrup. But when you don't do your homework, when you don't know the course speeds, when you haven't practiced all the courses, It doesn't matter if you're the strongest on the day, and we see that in the racing. You have to have teammates, first of all, and secondly, you have to know the corner speeds. He looked timid. He looked scared on the descent, scared of crashing, and then on the ascent, he was over-eager. And so you can race perfectly, but if you don't know the nuances, if you don't know the minute details, then it's all for none sometimes. And I think it's back to the drawing board, albeit I'm excited to see how the conversation continues after the handshake is being had. Sebastian Kuhn comes back, and then he puts on a bit of a block as Ryan gets it back. A lot of surprised faces, a lot of interesting storylines coming from today. As Christian Whiteman, I tip my hat. I know Christian has been racing a lot. He's hooked on the platform. He's absolutely awesome. And what he did today, getting on the podium, excellent racing from him, winning the first race, winning Kayla's mountain track, and then also really doing well on sudden lane change, pushing Tim Fulford to the limit. That's not something that's easy on a course like this. And this has just been Zone K and Zone L. We're in the second week of the CVRcade World Cup bracketed session. We've got Zone T later on tonight, 7 hours from now. So set your alarm, click follow now, and get ready for watching more racing later on tonight. As the sprint finish, Sebastian Kuhn with Quantum Shift, having none of it, but just by a tire width, he beats Ryan Goldenberg. Now, Frank trying to get out ahead on this rhythm course, it's usually the strategy to do. And you can see it did work out initially, but a crash took him down. Abilities change things up. Today, we had abilities on every course, and that's what the CVRcade World Cup is about. It is about changing things up, never making two things the same. The versatility of the platform is really on display here in the CVRcade World Cup, and I'm excited to see the racing that we're going to see on Saturday as more racing continues, as well as tonight. So if you're enjoying the CVRcade World Cup and you want to race for the money, I don't think it's too late. You can sign up to CVRcade.com now and get involved. My name has been Jesper Anker. I've been joined by Frank Garcia in the commentary booth. From all the racers, from the production team, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you so much for racing. Later on tonight in Zone T, Beth York will take over. She'll be joined by executive producer Victor Lundqvist. If you want to watch that, click follow right now. But until then, we'll see you. But no, Beth York goes crashing down. Termination, the suffering, the ability to... And she's unleashed everything in this attack. See just how much that win means to him. All the marvels. Kayla versus Allison, and to the line. Kayla Laguna takes the victory.